Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 6 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. Today, I am so happy to be interviewing my friend, and I guess fellow entrepreneur in the Portland metropolitan area, Jill Nelson. Jill, are you ready to inspire fellow Out bosses?
Definitely.
Awesome. So, Jill Nelson is a business coach specializing in business and professional development from a relationship and systems perspective. She's owned her own business since 2005, most recently acquiring Hot Diggity Pet Sitting in Seattle, Washington, which she actively manages. Prior to starting her own business, she was an ordained minister for 10 years. Jill holds an MBA from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and a Master's of Divinity from St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City, Missouri. She lives with her wife, Susan, her 13-year-old daughter, Christina, 1 dog, and 4 cats in Vancouver, Washington. Jill, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Rhodes. I'm excited.
Yeah, great. Enthusiasm is the name of the game here. So just tell us a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
Well, I think probably at this point, one of the most unique parts about it is that, I hung my shingle out as a small business owner doing small business consulting and working with individuals and entrepreneurs around career development and building a successful business. And just a year and a few months ago, I decided to, maybe you'd say get back in the saddle and run my own small business that was consumer facing as opposed to running a business to business type organization. So my coaching and my consulting work has kind of gone on a back burner. I still have 1 or 2 clients that I work with on a regular basis. But really what's been most exciting for me is actually getting back in the world of running a small business. And that's what I've been doing with Hot Diggity in Seattle.
I've been interviewing a few entrepreneurs now who have been managing several different businesses. So would you consider yourself a serial entrepreneur?
I guess you'd have to say I am, yes. And I think some of that is, I didn't start out wanting to be an entrepreneur. I certainly didn't go to school to be an entrepreneur. It kind of fell in my lap. I started out seeking a career in the corporate environment, but did find that to be a little bit challenging. I don't like being in the closet, and I've never been comfortable staying in the closet. So I've definitely had those struggles in the corporate environment. And when I left that, went into ministry, spent some time managing my own time, answering to no one but God and the board of the church, having all that freedom and flexibility, I just couldn't even imagine going back into the corporate world.
You had mentioned the freedom to be your own boss. And I'm curious, I want to take this a little bit deeper to look at the motivation. So were you primarily motivated to start your own business because it was, you had a calling to pursue a purpose-driven idea, or speaking to some of the culture that you experienced in the corporate environment, were you more motivated to start your own business because you were tired of trying to fit yourself into a culture that didn't value all of who you are?
I almost have to say that's kind of like a both and, as opposed to a one or the other. I found the constraints that the corporate world placed on me, show up at 9 o'clock, do X, Y, and Z, and then leave, did not fit well with my personality in general. Then layered on top of that, I was living in Florida, which is not exactly the hotbed of LGBT acceptability. So it was not easy to be out. Many of my coworkers were religious conservatives. They couldn't even imagine the fact that I could be a minister and be gay. So I know, without having hard evidence, that being out did have a negative impact on my career path in the organization. And so I have to say, getting out of that environment was paramount. And then once I discovered the freedom that you have when you choose when you work, you choose how you work, you choose where you work, is just amazing. And you get to choose who you work with to a very large degree. And in fact, the more successful you are, the more you get to do that. Where now I don't have to work with people who are homophobic.
Thinking about your business, you employ a number of people. In those instances where you're working either with your employees or you're contracting some of your work out, can you talk about ways that you, in your business at Hot Diggity and also in your business consulting, how you work to create an inclusive environment that values LGBTQ people as well as other people who historically have often felt excluded by employers.
I think that much of that starts how you frame yourself. I, from the very beginning, working with small businesses, made it very clear that I was LGBT. I have an LGBT business certification, which I proudly promote on my website, talk about actively. And there's a degree to which once you do that, once you put yourself out into the world in a certain context, that's what you attract. You attract people who are comfortable in that environment. And you automatically don't attract people that would be uncomfortable working with you. So there's that natural element that's there. And then to the most part, I don't technically have employees. All of the people that provide services for me are subcontractors. But from the very first conversation I have with them, I make it very clear that I'm in a same-sex relationship, that I have children, that, that's how I engage in the world. And I make it very clear that I'm very accepting of who they are and how they express themselves, as long as they represent my company well. You don't filter for or recruit for people who are like you, but you naturally tend to attract people who are like you. And in fact, if anything, you have to be very intentional about making sure that you're also attracting people who aren't quite like you, especially if you want to make sure that your gender roles are balanced and your racial representation is balanced. Those are things that you have to be intentional about when you're bringing people into your organization. So if anything, I would say I just try to make sure that when I interview people, I let them know that they're free to be who they want to be, who they feel comfortable being in my organization. And the end result of that is that, after I engage people, get them working for me, then they come out to me as either gender fluid or bi or trans or gay or lesbian. And they just kind of just naturally do that because they know it's a safe thing to do. And I try to make sure that that's always part of how I engage in the world. So it's a small company, and very often with small companies, you don't have a big manual other than, to put in your work manual that, you do not discriminate based on all of the things that race, religion, gender, orientation, etc. But beyond that, you actually have to engage in the world so that people see you don't do that. Because if people see you doing that, well, then it doesn't matter what you put in your manual.
That is so powerful. The statements that we put out are part of the intentions, and 90% is the actions that go behind making sure that, your diversity and inclusion statement aligns with the actions and the way that the company operates in the world. So thank you for what you're doing and setting a good example for other businesses and organizations really struggling with that in terms of engaging LGBT employees in particular. I want to shift a little bit and focus in a little bit deeper on identity. So you had talked about being LGBT, living in a state like Florida. I can say that, and that's my home state, so I understand. I'm curious, you did mention this, but I want to get really clear, especially for listeners who this is an important factor for them. Did being LGBTQ influence your journey to become your own boss?
Yes, it definitely did. As a woman, first of all, you're naturally at a disadvantage in the corporate world. You automatically have to do better, try harder, work longer to get the same level of recognition. And sometimes even doing all those things doesn't really make a difference. On top of that, being a woman who doesn't fit the standard stereotypes of appropriate female behavior in the corporate world makes it doubly hard to be successful. And I know that there were many times, in my corporate career where the fact that, I was not a stereotypical female negatively impacted my career. Just being able to get out of that and to be myself was so liberating and was so freeing that I would never go back. The freedom that comes with owning your own business, to me, is invaluable.
That's really valuable in thinking about freedom, the ability to think about who you want to work with, be innovative, be creative, and not feel as if you're covering certain aspects of who you are. I want you to take us back to a time where you're running your business, so not in the kind of employee context, but as the boss. If you could share a time when it was most difficult for you to be an out boss. There is a lot of freedom and there's still challenges. It's 2016 right now, so there's definitely still challenges of being out in the workplace. So if you could just share this moment, and it could be a moment where you were challenged with bringing your authentic self to work because you were afraid of losing business, or you just may have felt unsafe. So as you share this moment, if you could be as specific as possible and let us know what it was going on for you and how your business was impacted, this can be really helpful for our audience.
So the caveat I have is that it has been so long. I'm 57 years old, and I've been out or started coming out at the age of 17. So I think that the only times that being out have been a challenge for me or have made it harder is realistically it narrows the pool of potential clients. And when I went into the coaching profession, especially when I started to look at niching my business and where my ideal clients were in my target market, the realization that even if LGBT people are, let's just say, 5% of the population, that means that you are excluding 95% of the population if you're only going to provide services to LGBT people, which is a very small pool. So when you start to niche out how you want to provide services or where you want to find your ideal clients, and you realize that even if that whole group of people on the other side of the spectrum wanted to work with you, you don't really want to work with them because you don't want to have to not be able to. The very essence of coaching is bringing your full and authentic self into the relationship, and especially in a context of relationship coaching, whether it's a corporate, or a professional relationship or a personal relationship or a familial relationship of some kind. Not being able to bring your whole self into that relationship is detrimental both to you and to the person you're engaging with, and makes for a shallow, very two-dimensional relationship. So for me, just the realization that simply by being out in LGBT, I cut off a significant portion of my possible pool of clients. And then really trying to get at how to target a business specifically toward the right kind of client, it can be very daunting when you're first starting out.
So Jill, there's obviously some challenges of being your whole self, being out as LGBT, as your own boss, as you just described. And there are a lot of benefits to it. So I'm hoping that you can also share with our listeners a moment where you were able to successfully leverage being LGBT, being out as your own boss, to grow and build a thriving business.
Well, in particular, with the small business consulting work that I did, my primary clients were women starting their own business, running their own business, and LGBT business owners. And by getting very involved in organizations like the NGLCC, the National Gay and Lesbian Chambers of Commerce, and the local chambers, I have found just tremendous support, great colleagues, working with you and working with many other LGBT certified businesses, to me is one of the greatest things about being able to be out in this day and age in the LGBT business owning community, because the chambers are so supportive. Other small business owners are so supportive, and they actually want to be able to work with somebody who really understands them and understands their unique challenges. So, for me, it's been like a double win. I've gotten to work with people I really enjoy who are trying to do great work in the world, who are, not just out to make money, but very often out to make a difference, and are just a pleasure to be around. So for me, I think being out is the greatest thing in the world.
I love it.
And I can't even imagine being in the closet. And I love being able to work with other people who have similar values and similar goals, and appreciate what I bring to the table.
Yeah. That's really, really powerful. If there's one thing based off of both the challenge that you just shared and also your success of leveraging your LGBT identity, what is that one thing that you would like our listeners to really focus in on, remember, and take away and apply in their own practice?
I think in the short term, working around the challenges of being a minority in a minority group can make the business startup process more difficult. And you have to be tenacious. You have to be really willing to be in it for the long haul, not for the short gain, and plan well. For anyone, starting a business isn't easy. Starting a business in a niche community is even harder. So, the benefits are there, but they're very much long-term benefits. And the reality is not all small businesses succeed. So maybe the first idea isn't a great idea, but that doesn't mean you give up. If you're truly passionate about doing something in the world and doing it as an out person, don't give up. Keep looking for ways to monetize it. Keep looking for ways to modify until you find the piece that works. Because I think that our community brings so much to the world that the world really needs. Whether the world wants to admit that or not, it needs the creativity, the gifts, the perspectives that our communities bring to the world. And if anything, we've survived because we're tenacious. And if there's one skill that a small business owner needs, it's that persistence.
Right. Persistence, tenacity, definite planning, remembering the long game. Those are all truly, truly valuable pieces of advice that can help anyone in starting their own business, and especially for out entrepreneurs. So Jill, thank you for sharing all of these powerful insights. We're going to take a very quick sponsorship break, and please don't go anywhere, because when we return, we're going to jump into our bonus round and have the chance to get to know Jill just a little bit better.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Out Bosses. We are now going into our bonus round where we'll have the chance to get to know Jill just a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn one way that we can stay in touch with Jill after the interview. So Jill, are you ready for the bonus round?
Definitely.
All right, great. Okay, so did your LGBTQ identity hold you back from taking the entrepreneurial leap, or did it speed up the process?
For me, it speeded up the process, definitely.
And in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
Freedom from, just freedom. Bringing your whole self to work means that you, especially when you're the business owner, you get to choose. You get to choose how you dress. You get to choose how you show up. You get to choose who you engage with. And that's freedom.
What's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
I am a huge list maker and an organizer, to the degree that I take time every morning. And sometimes it's a first thing in the morning before anyone else is up. I go out and soak in the hot tub and just kind of ground myself and reflect and think through my day. Or on days when I don't have time to do that, literally sitting down and making a plan of action and trying as best as possible to stick to it. That one habit keeps me on track.
I love it. I think a personal hot tub for everyone who's a business owner might. Yeah. So name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
Well, I delegate almost all of the actual dog walking and pet sitting. I do not do any of it, and I am the ultimate last chance backup. So 99.9% of the time, that's done by somebody else. I just make sure that the organization happens, all those things. The other thing that I delegate is I've hired my 13-year-old daughter to do all of my paper shredding and filing.
Nice.
Yes.
Can you share a book or a podcast that has contributed to your success as an out boss?
I'm going to recommend a book that helped me very early on in my business. I'm not so sure that how relevant it is to outness, but the book Never Eat Alone really helped me wrap my head around building networking and talking about what I do in a way that seems natural and engages potential clients, it was one of the best books I ever read.
And I'll include the book and where you can find it in the show notes. I think that's a great recommendation.
Yes.
You've shared a ton of advice already, but as a parting piece of guidance, can you share, a personal mantra or just one thing that if you were talking to an out LGBT person who's considering starting their own business, what's that one piece of advice that you would share with them?
Know yourself and know your strengths and your weaknesses.
Know yourself and know your strengths and weakness. That is key in terms of knowing what you need to do, and especially thinking about doing the work that you're good at and remembering that you can delegate, that it is possible even if you are a solopreneur. So I think that's great advice. Jill, thank you so much for your time being on the show and for inspiring so many fellow out bosses. Can you please let us know one way that we can stay in touch with you once the interview's over?
You can always email me at jill@hotdiggitypetsitting.com. And you can also follow me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. And if you just look for Jill Nelson, sometimes Reverend Jill Nelson,
Nice.
I almost always pop up.
Great. And just for clarity, in case folks are interested, because you are so compelling, and I'm sure if someone's looking for a coach after listening to this interview, they may be very, very interested in hiring you. Are you taking new clients at this point in time for coaching?
Not a lot of new clients, but for the right client, I would consider it, yes.
Great. I think that's good news for a lot of people listening. So Jill, thanks again for being on the show. Outbosses, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Please be sure to check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversation. You'll have all of the information that Jill just shared on how to stay in touch with her. And please consider leaving a review in iTunes. For now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.